fans of MTG Burgeoning, welcome back to your channel for all things magic. And in today's video, we are back to Tales of MTG Burgeoning LGS edition. And if you missed any of our past tales from MTG Burgeoning, well, you can search them up in the archives and you can just sit back and chill and check them out. Because if you are looking for a deck tech, if you are looking for a reward series, this is not the video for you. This is about sorting out some cards, hanging back, chilling to some memories, and just taking it easy. Nostalgia and reminiscing. Since this is the LGS edition, I thought it would be a good time to talk about my all-time favorite pre-release experience at my LGS. And that's going to actually be stretched over two pre-release events because it was during the time when Wizards was still doing the blocks. Now, before too long ago, the block format was a couple of sets that were on the same plane, and generally these were 2 or 3 sets at a time that formed a block. For example, Return to Ravnica, Gatecrash, and Dragon's Maze was a block. Theros, Journey into Nyx, Born of the Gods, then Journey into Nyx, that was a block. You know, Innistrad, Dark Ascension, Avacyn Restored, that was another block. So you catch my drift when we're talking about blocks. So for this particular set of pre-releases, we're going to talk about it stretched over a 2-block pre-release event. And that first one, it was the Shadows over Innistrad block. So with Shadows over Innistrad released, the set that came after it to be the block part was Eldritch Moon. So before we talk about the Eldritch Moon experience, why don't we just spend a little time talking about what was the amazingness of Shadows over Innistrad. It was such a big deal for me. I mean, a return to Innistrad. Innistrad by itself was an awesome set. Avacyn Restored, which was the 3rd set of the original Innistrad block. I absolutely loved that set so much to the point where it was I'm not exactly sure if it was the first or second. It was around one of those very first times that I ever decided to get an entire case of a set. Now, granted, it wasn't just me. I had split that with someone else, but still, the excitement of being able to open up some Avacyn Restored, boy, that was just awesome. So I was just so stoked that Shadows over Innistrad was going back to one of my all-time favorite planes in Magic. Day after day, spoiler after spoiler, as the different cards were coming out, I was just like, oh, I couldn't wait, just could not wait to get there and get some of these cards. It's, you know, the transforming Avacyn, the transforming cards, just such amazing pulls. So, in gearing up for the pre-release, I remember thinking to myself, man, there's one card I want more than any other card in the entire set. It was my all-time favorite card. It's my all-time favorite card of the Shadows of Innistrad set, not my all-time favorite card overall. And it was my favorite Planeswalker. My favorite Planeswalker of all time is Sorin. So when Shadows over Innistrad came out and they spoiled Sorin, Grim Nemesis, I was just in awe of how amazingly powerful Sorin Grim Nemesis was. And I was hoping beyond hope. Not getting to the point where we're starting to pseudo-quote the flavor text of Anguished Unmaking. But I was definitely hoping that in my pre-release pack, it was the only card I wanted more than any other card. And it was a copy of Sorin Grim Nemesis. So finally, the big day came, the first pre-release. And I say just the first because I would participate in many of the pre-release events for Shadows over Innistrad and for Eldritch Moon. But this is the Shadows part right now. So got the pre-release pack. I sat down, started going through, opening things up. Got to my second pack. And what was in that second pack, ladies and gentlemen? If foreshadowing didn't do it for you, then I'll be very blunt with it. It was a copy of Sorin Grim Nemesis. The one card I wanted more than any other card In the large set of this block, now remember, back during block times, there were large sets and there were small sets. Not all sets were between, 270 and 300 cards. You would get a large set, something like a Shadows over Innistrad, which would be close to 300 cards. And then you would get a smaller set like an Eldritch Moon, which wouldn't even be close to 300 cards. And you can take that back even further. I mean, I think back in the original Innistrad set, the middle set being the small set in that block, Dark Ascension, I think that was like 170 or 180 cards sandwiched between two sets that were around 3 or maybe even more in original Innistrad and Avacyn Restored. But anyways, I digress. We go back to pre-release time. So, pack 2 was the second pack. I don't even remember what was in the first pack, but that second pack had a copy. Sorin, Grim Nemesis. Oh, and I made it known to everyone there, and I probably shouldn't have, because you want to keep, what you're building, your limited deck, you kind of want to keep that secretive, because if you meet people later on during the tournament, you don't want them knowing what's in your deck. But I could not contain my enthusiasm. Getting the one single card I wanted more than anything else. Why am I putting green? What is going on? Or white over on the black. Getting the one single card I wanted more than anything else. Oh, man. That was just aces, baby. So as the rest of the packs are opened and I'm seeing the cards that are in my little pool here, I also come across a copy of Anguished Unmaking, which, let's face it, to pair that with Sorin Grim Nemesis in Orzhov colors, well, that was just leaning towards an Orzhov build. However, with some of the other... Oh, look at that. That's amazing that I'm talking about it. And this was in the deck too. I actually think I had 2 copies of this in my limited pre-release deck for the Shadows over Innistrad pre-release, because I ended up going Mardu with it. An Insolent Neonate was just amazing. Turn 1, drop it down. It's a 1/1 with Menace, and if it ends up getting blown up or we're running short on gas and we need to get a card into our hand, we can discard a card and sacrifice him to draw a card, or he chump blocks and we can do the same thing. The best part about this is that when I was discarding the cards, I was discarding Madness cards. So I was discarding like Fiery Temper, which then you could tap a red and just deal a lightning bolt, or I was discarding, oh man, there were so many. There was that vampire that would transform into a 3/2 flyer on turn 2 or something like that. There was also the one black sorcery spell that for a black mana drained 3 life from the opponent and then you gain 3 life. But the Insolent Neonate was there, and all the makings were right there for a vampire Madness Mardu deck. So it was red, white, and black, and with the great Madness cards from Under the Floorboards, I think was in that deck too. One of the greatest named cards in the history of Magic. From Under the Floorboards. Come on. That is just amazing. That is the best named card in the history of cards. So anyways, we're doing the so we're going with the Mardu Madness, because we have the Madness cards, we got the Great Removal with the Anguished Unmaking, and then with Sorin. The deck fit together so amazingly. I was done with it in like 10 minutes. And I don't know if anyone has a ton of experience with constructing limited decks in a pre-release environment, or if you're just playing limited at your shop or at home. But to get your 6-pack card pool and to have your entire deck that you feel ridiculously confident about in 10 minutes, that is an anomaly. That is not something that happens with any kind of regular, at least it doesn't for me. I mean, maybe I'm the one that's the anomaly that it doesn't happen for. But either way, so we get this, I get the Mardu Vampire Madness deck is up and running. And I'm just sitting there on playtest, and I'm like, man, this deck is really good. We're going to be okay here. Sorin's going to come down, and he's just going to be unstoppable, particularly with the removal spells. And you know what? Round 1 came 2-0. Round 2 came 2-0. Round 3 came 2-0. And then we get to the championship for that particular pre-release event. And your boy Burgeoning ends up 4-0ing the Shadows over Innistrad pre-release event number 1. That is right, folks, with that Mardu Madness. Oh, that was a time. The Shadows over Innistrad pre-release events, one of the best ever. Right behind it, the Eldritch Moon pre-release events. But that will have to be a tale for another time. This is MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things Magic.